these are the marked buildings that have reconstructions done so far. So there's around 8 or 9 of them that we've attempted to do reconstructions on. Now we need to add the building with arches as well, but because I don't really have anything to show you from this, we're going to need to look at this on the reconstruction that we did with Blink, with Gotze, but we will see that later. So the problems, as we've discussed before, are in the lack of documentation. So we discussed the differences in the methodological approach of the excavators during their period of their work. So in the 20s and 30s, people didn't really give that much attention to, let's say, destruction layers and what a destruction layer in a building or in a room can tell you about how the room looked, and if that was very helpful to actually reconstruct. In the methodology that we use right now in the excavation, it is a lot slower, but you gain infinitely times more data than they did back then. So this is the lack of documentation is one problem. The other big problem is on a site like this, there's been, aside from the excavation, there's a lot of conservation been done in all of the periods of the excavation of the site. So the cement caps that you saw on all of the buildings, like on the crowns of the walls, on top of the walls, most of them were done in the 20s and 30s. And back then, this was probably the best way to preserve the buildings, because, for example, the Theodosian Palace, all of the walls were entirely covered on the top with cement caps. And this contributed to its preserving in the shape that it is today. But after 100 years, even after 50 years, as we know today, because there's a lot of research being done on this, the cement actually eats the stones. And then you have the cement caps preserved, but the stones underneath have completely dissolved. Stobi has a very big issue with this because most of the stone that's used in the building of the buildings is a sandstone. So it's a very porous stone. All of the buildings that you see, all of them had a facade on the outside, and they had some sort of isolation on the inside, whether it was frescoes, whether it was clay, something. So they weren't made to be exposed to the elements. And then by exposing them, we actually contribute towards their deterioration. Something that we as archaeologists don't mention enough is that we are a very destructive science. So even if we can call ourselves a science, because we assume a lot of things, of course, based on evidence, but still we assume a lot of things. So if, let's say, this room right now got destroyed in an earthquake and we all died here, and after 500 years, archaeologists came and they excavated it meticulously. So today archaeology excavations are as meticulous as, it's even called forensics sometimes. So the cliche that, oh, you're in archaeology, you work with a little brush and little dental tools. Yes, we actually do that when that's necessary. Not all the time, but when it is necessary. But the point is, if this room collapsed and then you excavate this with a mechanical excavator, you're not going to figure out that we are all here having a presentation on something. But if you meticulously excavated first how the roof got destroyed, how the roof fell down, how the ceiling fell down, how then the walls and the windows fell down, and all of us are underneath. So you will know that this room was standing when everybody was inside. And when it got destroyed, everything that fell on top of us, that means that everybody was inside when it was destroyed. So with the methodology of excavation that they had in the past, it is impossible to reconstruct events and then to reconstruct even anything that happened to the building. Maybe you will be able to reconstruct in some way how the building looked, but not the story behind it. So again, the point that says in situ positions of architectural elements is literally what I just explained to you right now. In situ is a Latin term that we in archaeology use when we find something in its original position as it was when it was destroyed. So if this building collapsed, when you excavate it and when you clean first, let's say, because first you're going to find the roof tiles on top. When you clean them up, the roof tiles are in situ because no one has touched them since they fell off. So this is more important in floor levels, for example, where you can find actual finds, you can find coins, you can find pottery, you can find glass, you can find sculptures, and then through their original information on their location, you can reconstruct what it meant and why they fell there. This is the reason why it was possible to reconstruct, for example, the baptistry in the Episcopal Basilica that you saw today. So those columns, the white columns and the pillars and the capitals and the bases, they were all fallen down. But because it was very well excavated and very well documented, now there's an opportunity for 2, 3, 4 different types of reconstruction based on the evidence from the excavation. So in situ is a very, very important term for us archaeologists, which means that what we excavated was untouched by anyone after it got destroyed or just left there. So these are the buildings that our late professor reconstructed. I will not read them out loud. We will see each and every one very, very briefly. So the location, you can see here where the gate is. So this is the Porta Heraclea. We saw it only from here, right next to the semicircular court. We didn't go near it. So he offered 2 different ideas of how the gate looked in early imperial times and in late Roman times. Unfortunately, most of the things that he used, for example, the fossa here is non-existent. The fossa is the part that you're excavating that they usually do in front of the fortification wall, so that it will be more difficult to whoever attacks the city to be able to climb on the fortification wall. So this is one of the first lines of defense for the city. There is no evidence to base this on. This here, the back wall, is nothing to base it on. There's a lot of things in both of them, rooms that do not exist. And again, he says this in his book. He is not hiding it. He says, look, I know these are not real reconstructions because they're not based on what they found in the excavations. And he had an excuse, which is a valid excuse. He didn't know what they found because there is no documentation for it. So it's this vicious circle that, that goes on and on and on. But then after a while, there are some people that can tell you that, okay, maybe there is some information that we can actually get from what we have. Let's try and because this is not. Yeah. Yeah. So this is a reconstruction of the actual remains, architectural remains of the Porta Heraclea that were just found scattered around the gate. So the gate, again, was excavated in the 20s and 30s, 1927 actually. And everything that was found during the excavation, it was found either in situ left there, or they just picked it up and just left it right next to it. So based on things that were there, there's a colleague of ours that used to work for the National Conservation Center called Zoran Georgiev. He did most of the conservation on the fortification wall where Porta Heraclea is. And it took him, I think, 2 years to do this simple drawing of what the gate should look like. But you can see that he actually bases all of this on something that he found, architectural elements that he found around the gate. So again, it's an okay representation, it's an okay reconstruction of a building, but it's not based on evidence. This, on the other side, is something that's based on evidence, and which is, I would say, from the point of view of an archaeologist, acceptable. And we will discuss later, because I really want to hear your opinion. Again, I only have a point of view from my place, from my point of view, because I'm an archaeologist and I want this to be as authentic as possible. But the more I discuss this with people that are not archaeologists, they don't really care if it's authentic or not, which is, to me, it's mind-boggling, but it is the truth. So yeah, just a little food for thought. Think about it, and then we will discuss this once the lecture is done. The theater is also one of the big imperial buildings, the few that we have discovered in the city so far. It's probably the building that has undergone most attempts for reconstruction. This one is done by Mikulić, but based on drawings from the architect that worked here in the American Yugoslav project in the 70s. So just to have an idea of what we're talking about, you see this here. So this is the corridor that we walked through. So this is the smaller corridor, and that goes all the way through here. So we walked from here this way, then we came here. And as I told you, a larger piece of the theater is missing. The bigger part of the theater is missing. So this is one of the drawings. This is another one. So as I mentioned when we walked on the site, the theater itself has two different phases. So this is the one when the theater was built. So only a view of the inside. And then the question that we had about the holes, the post holes in the lower parts of the seats of the theater. This is why and how they were used. So this is after the repair that the theater suffered in the earthquake in 300. So it took them a while to actually repair it because it was in bad shape. And again, we know of these repairs because of the methodology of excavation. If we did it the way that people did it 50, 60, 70 years ago, then we would not know that there was earthquake damage. We would not know that there is a second phase. We would assume it, but we wouldn't have anything to base it on. Now, it's a little bit easier and it's a lot more informative. This is something that Gotze and one of the architects that work here in the period between 2014 and 2017 started doing. They literally stopped. I don't know why. I think they didn't have enough time to do it. There was a lot more other things to do. But this is just a way to see the multicolorism, so the many colors of what a Roman building would look like. And again, we will see this when we show you the reconstruction of the building with arches of the interior. As I said to you before, during the site tour, it is literally something like Las Vegas. The Episcopal Basilica is also one of the buildings that has undergone the most attempts at reconstruction. So this is the axonometric attempt at reconstruction from our late Professor Ivan Mikulić. And this is actually the one that has probably the fewest mistakes. It still has a lot of mistakes, but it has the fewest of them all because most of the architectural decoration in the building is still there. Most of the architectural elements, they're still there. You just need to know how to technically read the elements and then try and figure out in which phase of building they were used, so then you know which phase of reconstruction to the building you can actually assign them to. The baptistry that we saw, so this is the reconstruction that the actual reconstruction on site is based on. So Dinsmore was one architect that also worked here in the American Yugoslav project in the 70s. He is, I think, one of the people that left here and no one ever heard about him ever, not even the people that hired him for the project, so nobody knows how and what he did. He took some of the documentation here, but luckily there were copies of everything, so no harm there. But his reconstruction actually is the most viable one that we can actually see in the field right now. We can actually see that it was done the same way that he reconstructed it. There is also other possibilities. This is another one. Also one of the archaeologists that worked here in the 1970s, Ruth Kolarek. She is an archaeologist. She teaches at Colorado College. She used to teach, I think she's retired now, at Colorado College in the States. She is a mosaic researcher, so she works on mosaics, but she also does some architectural reconstructions. She's done a few with the mosaics, and this is one that she suggested based on the architectural elements. Why I'm showing you these two different types of reconstructions, it is because here you can see what a well-documented excavation can offer you to do. So all of these columns, you see there are bigger columns on the lower part, and then there are smaller columns on the upper part. And all of them were fallen around on top of the mosaic floor as they fell when they were destroyed. And if you didn't have that documentation, if you didn't excavate that, then you would be dumbfounded, like, how would I put this together? But because you have the bigger columns closer to the baptistry and the smaller ones further away, then you can talk about, okay, maybe this is one way to do it, maybe this is the other way to do it. So a lot more evidence and something to base your reconstructions on. The North Basilica is also one that was done by Professor Mikulčić. As you can see, again, an axonometric design, a little sneak peek inside of the narthex on the right side. One of three buildings that he reconstructed in Stobi that has its own baptistry. You can see the baptistry in the lower part of the reconstruction. Then the semicircular court. This is where our professor really went wild with it. He suggested, first of all, a colonnade here. We have no proof of this, no columns, no bases, not even a stylobate for the bases, so nothing. This here is non-existent. So if you start from here all the way to here, there could be something that you can argue for, but then he made a second story here. We don't even have all the columns here in the 6th century. So the sculpture, like not even a base for a sculpture, we don't have it. Yeah, there is a base for a base in the middle, but you don't know what was there. He even suggested that this was a sculpture of the Emperor Theodosius celebrating his visit to the city. In the 4th century, when Theodosius visited the city, this semicircular court didn't exist at all. So this was something that was built in the 5th century. So again, I'm telling you this so that you can see what the dangers are of doing reconstructions without having enough information. Then the large bath, you already saw that in the field. Yeah, this is a very idealistic look of how it looked. You can see the little basins right here. He made 4 and then 3 here, so 7 of them. We only have 2. It's an ideal way of looking at things. So now we get to the residential buildings, which an architect that is the sister to an archaeologist that we know very well and that has extensively written on Stobi, especially on the residential buildings, Dafina Gerasimova. Her sister, Zuzana Gerasimova-Matovska, was an architect. She still is an architect, and she did some reconstructions just for the sake of having an idea how things looked. So this is the Theodosian Palace, and we had a view from somewhere around here. So now you can see the niches right here, the way they're reconstructed. Again, you can see there are columns here, intercolumnal parts. We have no proof of this. We have no proof of this. There is a lot of things that are also based on just the ground floor. Again, the problem with not knowing what was found, where it was found, because of the methodology of excavation, because this was excavated 100 years ago. So it's not the fault of the reconstructor, it's just a problem with not having enough data to work with. This is the House of Polycharmos. Again, only the facades and some of the roof was done. I don't feel comfortable saying that there is something right or wrong here, because again, like in the other buildings that were excavated in the period in the 20s and 30s, we just don't know. So based on what's on the site, I would say this is more or less okay. But then again, you have a second story where you know there was a second story, but then is a second story only above this part and then nowhere else. And then Tiberius Claudius Polyharmos said that the entirety of the second floor of his house he's going to keep for his family, and then the lower part can go to the Jewish congregations. We started using newer like something more in terms of contemporary technologies around 2015. So the first thing that we did was a mobile app that was the audio guide. This is something that we've done a second version of as well, and which is still functional today. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten around to adding a lot more languages, so we only have 2. The actual recordings that we have for the audio guide in English and Macedonian were done pro bono because we didn't have any funding for it. So the English one I did myself, the Macedonian one a colleague from the Archaeological Museum in Skopje did. But it is something that I think is very, very useful. And since we made this, so we started doing this in 2016, I think. Yes. And then there were some funds remaining from a project from the Ljubljana process. And then we started doing it with one company, and then we had no funding to finish it. And then after a year or 2, we had all the content created. Of course, again, it was all free of charge. And then in 2018, we had a couple of friends that opened a studio. So again, free of charge, we made all of the recordings in a professional studio. And then with some additional money, we hired an app developers that did an Android and an iOS app. And then the first version of the audio guide actually started working in sometime in 2018. I think in 2020 or 21 we did a new version of it where we added not only walking around the site, but we also added like thematic tours. So if you only wanted to see early Christian basilicas, it's a tour leading you through Christian basilicas. If you only want to see residential buildings, there's a tour for that. And they're all very, very well organized in terms of time. So if you have 15 minutes, you can pick one. If you have 30 minutes, you can pick the other one. And I think, I'm not sure about the numbers, but the last time I checked was 2 years ago maybe, and we had around something close to 30,000+ downloads on both platforms, so both iOS and Android together. We had around something more than 30,000 downloads officially. It's always weird when I hear my voice, like people are walking around the site. And it's a funny story. So when we're doing excavations here, there's of course a lot of archaeologists in one place, and sometimes you can feel like a reality show because you're working here and then the fence is here and people are looking at you. And it has happened a couple of times that a couple of colleagues are working, I go to do something else, and then someone comes with the audio guide, and then I'm speaking in English, and then they start arguing with me because they think I'm behind them, and they're working and they're arguing with me, and then they turn around and it's like, oh yeah, sorry. So it's very weird, but it's a very functional thing, and I have to say I'm very proud to say that after we did this a couple of years later, Heraclea in Bitola did the same thing. Now Ohrid has done the same thing. A couple of museums in Skopje have done the same thing, which is a very simple, a very cheap way, but it also helps you in not having to have a person guide you, or if you cannot afford having 5 guides, now you can have 1 guide, but you can also have this, which is, of course, even here, it's free of charge. So yeah, it's something that I think we've done really well, but that doesn't mean that we need to stop. We need to implement a lot more languages, and then this is where the difficult part comes. Nobody that does voiceovers professionally is going to do this pro bono, and it takes a lot of money. The material that we have for all of the buildings is around somewhere between 16 and 17 pages long. like we wanted to make it in German because we have a lot of German and French tourists. So German and French are the languages that we try to find people that to do it in. They asked for obscene amounts of money to do it, and then yeah, this is where we are right now. So probably we need to be a little bit smarter about it and put it in a project of some sorts, and then maybe we can actually do it properly. I think in 2018 or 19 we started doing the VR experience, and together with Blink 42, we also included an expert in gladiators, an archaeologist from the Serbian Institute of Archaeology called Ivan Bogdanovic, who works at Viminacium. He excavated the entirety of the amphitheater in the Viminacium area. It was a very interesting process. It was a very new thing for me personally because I was part of it. It was a lot of fun for the first time I had to work with people that are not archaeologists, and this is where I started figuring out that everybody else, aside from archaeologists, has a very different view on how things are perceived, because it's a professional flaw of ours that we look at everything through the lens of, is this correct, is this not correct, do we have evidence for this, do we not have, we do not let ourselves at least give a little leeway to the narrative, and the narrative can cover a lot of those indeficiencies even if they're not true. So yeah, this was a good starting point for me professionally, and yeah, the process was I think not very long. It took around not even a full year to completely finish it. So we worked with an architect on reconstruction. Gotze worked on the architectural part of the theater. We had a professional theater actor do the voiceover in English and in Macedonian. There was 7 or 8 of us that did the voiceovers for the public. I have a lot of videos of this. I need to find them where they are. It is hilarious. Yeah, and in the end, the implementation of it showed us how to do these things and what to think of when we do it. So this was a sort of a baptism by fire for me, at least, because it is all very enthusiastic when you start. Oh yes, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we have time for this, no, we don't need money, we don't need anything, we have this, we have that. And then when you start to actually implement it, then you start seeing the problems, and then you start seeing where the issues are. So how we imagined this when we made it was that you are going to sit, I mean, it's a very bizarre thing, but it's a very simple thing, but we didn't think of it. The whole experience is you're seated in the 6th row of the theater. You can see the name of your family here. You're part of the Cornelianos family. You can see everything. It's very nice. But when you brought it to Stobi to test it, it was September, like now, but it was a little bit hotter. Of course, marble is very, very hot during the summer. And when you sit down, for the first 2 or 3 minutes, everything is fine. But after 3-4 minutes, you start sweating, and then the VR goggles start going, you can't see anything. It's a problem. So this is an issue that we fixed by putting a bench inside of the theater, so where we went in the corridor, and then now we do it there. But even there, now there's problems because you need a person to come to set up the laptop, to set up the goggles, and then there's a person that sits down, looks at them 7.5 or 8 minutes of an experience, and then gets off, goes to walk, and then the same person needs to pick everything up, put it in a bag, and bring it back. So why I am telling you this? So with this experience that we did, that we had, then we took this to the next new digital tool that we created as part of the Immersium project, was to make a mobile app that was not dependent on human resources. So again, I cannot reiterate this enough. Using new technology in an open space. So museums and exhibition areas are a different thing. But using VR technology in an open space is a very, very, very problematic thing, because you need a lot of human resources, which is usually in these places very difficult to get. 2, we do not have a stable electricity network. The electrical network here is awful. Like, we change UPSs and computers every 3 to 4 years because of this. We changed all of the ACs this year after 4 or 5 years. This is not a good way to go. So what we tried to do with the Immersium app is to make an experience for visitors that will not be reliant on the guide of the site, or that will not be reliant on someone telling them you need to go here, you need to do this, but something that will be more intuitive. And then even if it's not intuitive, you can have directions for where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do. In the first couple of months it was very popular. Then later on we had some problems with the App Store and with the Play Store for a couple of months. So now it's back online. Milan told me that we have some sort of upgrade in the last month or something. So this is pretty much alive and kicking, and it is a very easily sustainable way to do a presentation on the site. So I will not tell you what it is. You can go and check it out if you want, and if you don't want to, you can just ask me later and I will tell you. So this is part of the reconstruction of the theater that we did for the VR app. This is what the virtual reality experience looks like. It was done in Unreal Engine 4. You know, that now with Unreal 5, this could look a lot better, and we can actually put a lot more people in the audience. You know, it would be a lot easier to run. Now everything is a little bit slower. And as a public entity, so the institution is a public institution, we are run by the government, it is very difficult for us, so we cannot pay anything online. So all of these apps continue working because I pay them personally. I pay for the App Store every year, I pay all of the fees all the time, and then I find a way to do something with the project so that I can get that money back. It's not a lot of money, but it's still not money that I should be paying. It should be something to do with the institution. But the laws that we have are very difficult. We cannot do this. So this is a very, very big problem that we have. Of course, the Gladiator app had its own media campaign. We even had a few billboards in Skopje and on the highway leading to Stobi from Skopje and the one from Greece. It was very effective. A lot of people that otherwise wouldn't want to come here came to Stobi just to see this. It's still quite a popular thing to do, but as the time passes, it breaks down very often. And again, if it breaks down, it's always, Dime, can you come and fix it? Dime, can you take this there? Can you take this there? In the end, it is not my job to do this. I do a lot of other things, but this is not my job to do, but I still do it. And again, it can be a very, very big problem. So this is inside of the theater. You can see where the corridor is. So this is how we actually do it right now. So yeah, this is, I've already talked about this, the advantages and the disadvantages. I will not go into the uninterested employees and general inertia in the field of digitalization because I don't want to complain. I think I've complained enough. So now we go to what we are doing to promote Stobi lately. So up until February this year, our social media presence was completely non-existent. So we had one post for, let's say, like 6 months, and then we never told the public what we are doing. We never informed anyone what we are doing in terms of projects, in terms of excavation, in terms of what we do every day. And this is something that we are trying to fix. So what we started to do, we made 2 different types of campaigns, and then within them there's several different campaigns that can make Stobi closer to the public. And the response has actually been very, very good. And we talked about this with Milan and Christos around half an hour ago, that After we started being more active, we started working at the beginning of March this year. There's a couple of museums that have started doing it as well. There is another archaeological site that started doing it as well. And you can see that people are very interested in actually showing what they do. They just need a little push. So again, I'm an archaeologist. I'm not supposed to do this. So this is not part of my job description at all. But still, I do my job, and in my free time, when I have some free time, I do this as well. Again, there should be, so we have a person employed at the institution that her position is public relations. Can you guess what she does for the site?
Campaign for social media.
I wish. No. No. What she does is she makes commercial copies for the souvenir shop because she is an academic sculptor. Yeah, this is her background. But this is just a way for me to show you that because of the way the system works, not always the people that are in the positions that what they should be doing is what they're supposed to be doing. But then because of people like me that do more than they should do, they have a little bit more free time. And this is also a very big problem. So this is just, I will just shortly go through the social media campaign. These are the educational ones. So we have History Lesson 2.0, where we have just information that are lesser known about Stobi, and in a very simple way, so like 3 or 4 information just on a background with something from Stobi. And this is probably the campaign that people have reacted the best towards, because it's simple, it doesn't take much time, and it's very, very informative. Also, the public does not know for how long Stobi has been excavated. And then we started educating the public through the Exploring Stobi through the years. We started educating the public that Stobi has multiple campaigns of excavations, that there were excavations even in the 20s, in the 30s, that what was done, just to make people aware that this is not something that started 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. This Stobi is a site that's been excavated for 110 or 11 years so far. It has been the interest of people from all around the world, and it continues to do so. So the idea behind these campaigns is to make people more aware how important this site is and why it's important. Not only, oh, look at this, we have all of these wonderful buildings, there's nothing like this in the country. No, that's not the point. The point is to make it as simple as possible for people to understand, okay, this is why this is important, this is why this is not important. Then there's also the campaign that is called Stobi Through the Lenses of Journalists. So we have, I think, 7 or 8 journalists in the period between the 2 world wars that came to Stobi and took pictures, a lot of photos. So this is one Bulgarian journalist that came during the Second World War, and he took photos of Stobi. So we just try to put all of these information out there so that it's there for people to use, not only for the archives. For example, Stobi from above, Stobi has been a pioneer in aerial photography since the 1920s. So the Yugoslavian, back then, Air Force took many photos of the site, probably required by the excavators in the 20s and the 30s, because most of Vladimir Petković and George Manozisi were very influential back then, and those are the heads of the excavations in the 20s and the 30s in Stobi. So they required some photos, some aerial photos. So in the 20s and 30s, Stobi is the first site in all of Yugoslavia to have photos from the air. Then, of course, in the 70s, the American Yugoslav project, they made photos with balloons. And this is an example of how the large bath looked in the 70s from a balloon. And we have, I think, 11 or 12 other buildings with this idea. And the promotional campaigns are promoting We have something that's called a digital showcase, which is because we lack an exhibition space, so we can't really show. One of the more frequent questions that we get is like, okay, we understand like these are the buildings, but what did you find in here? And then you find yourself in a position now, okay, I can show you some photos on my phone and stuff like this. So this is a way to actually show the public at least a part of the museum collections at Stobi, because so far, because I'm the documentator for Stobi, we have something more than 52,000 entries in the museum entry book at Stobi. And this is only material from the 1960s. We have nothing from before. So it is a lot of material to show, but this is the only way that we can figure out to show it until we actually create an exhibition space. Then the one called From Stobi with Love is actually something like a promotion for the souvenirs that we sell at the souvenir shop. And then we also have something that we try and promote what we are actually doing and what kind of work we are doing at the moment. So from this year, we started working a little bit more closely with all of the projects that we do. So every excavation, every conservation that takes part, every educational visit, every scholarly presentation, every conference visit, for example, we had a visit from the German Archaeological Institute 2 weeks ago. The two directors were here trying to do some sort of collaboration. We informed the public of that, which is before no one would even know that something like that happened. And we're not expecting that to change the view of people from Stobi in the short term. This is something that we need to keep at for at least 5-10 years, and then maybe slowly we can start to change the perception of what we actually do here.